This is TWiT.
Well, I do want to jump into the next bite for Curtis is going to go through here. And so I want to ask, Curtis, how is election security evolving in the age of social distancing?
It's forgivable if it slipped the national mind during the coronavirus pandemic, but a national election is still scheduled for Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020. And there are, fortunately, still people who are focusing their attention on making sure that the election process is secure, even if those people aren't entirely confident that secure and election go together like peanut butter and chocolate. Now, I don't think that an outsider can tell you whether you're going to have a secure election. In some areas, it could happen by mail. Some are going to use voting machines, and some use a combination of these, and as well as others. And all of those mean that we're talking about many different elections rather than one election. The problem really is in our ability to audit the systems, not just electronic, but all the way down to paper systems, to make sure that they are completely trustworthy. The key is doing this in a way that reassures the voters that what they are having is a secure and reliable election, while doing as little as possible to get in the way of them casting their ballot. So one of the things that many of the experts are worried about is what they call the different layers of elections, because not only are we having a presidential election, but we're going to be electing a third of the Senate, all of the House of Representatives, plus countless state and local officials. And to many ways of thinking about it, each one of those layers is a separate election. Each one has different motives, although generally affecting the way that policy is made is the goal. Each of those different layers of government affect that decision differently. Not only that, but there are multiple ways that an adversary could have an impact on the democratic process. Now, a lot of people tend to focus on the question of whether the votes will be cast, registered as they are cast, and then properly counted as they're registered. But as we saw in the last election, there are a lot of ways where an outsider can try to have an impact, whether it's through social media, stories planted in the regular media, or even other means. There are lots of layers at which they can have an impact. There are organizations, companies like Cyber Reason, who go in and do what is effectively wargaming of election scenarios. And they did one back in February where they looked at a number of these different layers. They took a look at what would happen if adversaries tried to use social media, plant stories in the mainstream media, or even manipulate the traffic signals to try and keep voters away from the polls. Broadly speaking, what they found was that it's quite easy for an outside actor to strew chaos and come back and make things difficult for a while, but that officials do have it within their capability to go back and correct for that in a sufficiently timely manner to keep the chaos from having an impact on the results. So there are a number of things here that we're going to be looking at, and one of them, I'm going to start, Brian, with you. People do become fixated on this endpoint security. That's the security of the voting mechanism, when a lot of experts say that it's the back-end systems, the database servers where voter rolls are kept, or even the email systems used by the secretaries of state that are the real points of vulnerability. Do you see any analog with that and enterprise security where people get very fixated on what's happening on the laptop and sometimes take their eye off what's going on back in the servers?
It's always that case. It's what they can see that they tend to worry about. So as a result, I personally think it's going the low-hanging fruit is going to be those servers, because then you can have the biggest bang for the buck. So if you're going to have someone, let's go worst case scenario, say a nation state wants to mess with our presidential election. They're not going to spend all the human resources to go and mess with the voting systems unless they can do it all across the board, say with a bug. They're going to go after the databases because that's going to be the low-hanging fruit. And that's the same thing. You don't go after really the ATM machines. You go after the banking systems that are on the back end of those ATMs. So, yeah, I think it's going to be the back end databases and management systems that people are going to go for.
Well, I think you're right. And I've spoken to a number of experts who make that point. Lou, I want to look to you for another question about layers of a different sort. You know, the war game looked at a number of things like external infrastructure, traffic flow, things like social media and the impact that can have on the way people think and act on information. Do you think that issues like that should be part of an enterprise security plan as much as, say, issues of keeping malware off local systems?
Absolutely. I think that, especially ensuring you're educating your users, you're bringing them campaigns to bring them through kind of mock campaigns to basically bring them through this whole situation. We're seeing if they believe the information they see, whether it's email or, posts by users, social streams, documents, that kind of thing, to make sure that they understand that there is going to be data out there that should be fact checked and, that they don't believe anything that they basically get when it comes to emails and other kind of devices when it comes to this type of thing. And I think that should definitely be part of it. I think we actually see a lot of organizations, they implement these campaigns where they have people report specific potential malware and or spam in their email, and they see how many people actually do this reporting or how many people actually catch it, as well as how many people click on the links or even copy the data. And it's interesting. It's actually kind of crazy to see how many users actually fall for this type of thing. And so by bringing this education to your users, just making sure you provide simple guidelines for doing this, as well as services and systems to help them along the way, I definitely think enterprises will be in a better space and a better place in the long term.